All right, we're not going to have Dorothy. She was not able to get off to work. But we have Elaine and Natasha, so we're all here.
All right.
All right, so let's get started. Do you want to say anything about the continuances first?
Yeah, sure. So Sageway is just asking for another continuance while they formulate those responses to staff. And then Highland Trail, we've got a few things we need to work out, so a little bit extra time on those reviews.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from either of the commissioners?
No, thanks.
All right. Elaine? Okay, well, let's go on then. Frederick Health.
Hello. So the applicant did go back and reanalyze the intersections and provided an update. So now they're asking for findings of adequacy for 4 of them, I think. Yeah, 4. And so that information's been added to the staff report. Sherry and I, we chatted about it, and we think the best thing is to let the applicant discuss their what they've revised and everything, and let them lead the discussion. So
Okay.
So they can provide everything and discuss everything that they did. So
Okay. Sounds good. Questions from the commission?
I have some questions. So I was looking over it, I guess just like for clarification, how did, like there was a provisional road certificate, like how does that determination happen to get the provisional?
I'll let Sherian speak to that. He just
Hi. So any project that requires APFO determination, so typically that would be something that generates more than 50 weekday peak hour trips, or Saturday, I think we have a threshold of 100 peak hour trips, and just kind of going to the basics. So that's what require in APFO testing that also requires submission of a traffic study. So the traffic study, the applicant works with the staff to establish a study boundaries. Basically, the study boundary kind of covers the area that the project will have some influence or some impact. So in this case, given the size of the project, that's why you see a larger study area versus a smaller project that may generate 200 trips versus this generating much higher number of trips. So they do go through the study, and the testing is done per the requirements that are in our code. So section 4 kind of lays out what is the threshold for this testing and the performance standards for these intersections with the project, the traffic from the project considered. So they've done the analysis, and all of the intersections, or the 3 different criteria, let me put it that way, that they test for. One is capacity. Does the intersection have the capacity to handle the future traffic impact? The other is if there are intersections that has excessive delay, that's something that tests for. The third part is really the the storage length for, say, a left turn lane or a right turn lane is adequate. And so those sort of the 3 criteria they look at. So in these cases, I believe except for Monocacy and 26 in Monocacy and River Benway, not have to look the notes for Monocacy and the Walmart entrance. The first two tests, like in terms of capacity and the delay, they satisfy all of those for, as I said, all the intersections for those three. That has been notoriously pretty bad for a long time. So those are sort of clear cut in terms of where we see it as mitigation. I think we have those 26 in Monocacy. It's been in the highway needs inventory. That's a state highway administration intersection. So it will require a big capital improvement project running into millions of dollars and a lot of planning and funding to fix it. That aside, the other intersections that we are looking at where they ask for a finding of adequacy, like for example, Monocacy and Mill Pond Road, the intersection works from a capacity and delay standpoint. There were peak hours where the left turn storage, that's if you go west on Monocacy and make a left into Mill Pond, that storage exceeded during the peak hour. If you look at the 95th percentile queue length, that's what we look at. So is there assurance that the 95% of the time the queue is adequate? So the 95% of the times the the storage is adequate. There is that 5% chance the storage won't be adequate. That's where the 95th percentile exceeded the existing storage length, and that's where they asked for originally mitigation or a finding of adequacy. So in this case, they went back and added, they're proposing to add 100 more feet to that intersection and offer the full mitigation. That's why they dropped that particular intersection from the need to find an adequacy by the Planning Commission. The other so I'm just walk through the list here.
Turian, I think
Yeah.
what she was asking is, how was a provisional certificate granted? Not
Okay,
the
so
explanation of each of the intersections.
okay,
Thanks.
so yeah, thank you for reminding me. So the provisional certificate, we look at and say, okay, there are some intersections that need improvement to bring it to that standard of level of service D, or the delay is acceptable. And that's where we say, okay, what kind of mitigation improvement could get you to there? And all of those that are listed, I think there's a total of 9, kind of lays out what kind of mitigation that needs to be done to bring those intersections to compliance with the city code. And that's what the provisional certificate would say. The provisional certificate was for say, before you get your building permit, these are the things you need to do. I don't know if I explained. So essentially, it's their mitigation. That's what they we list out in the provisional certificate.
Thank you. I do have some more questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I believe it was like referencing like the state highway administration. I don't have it right in front of me, just kind of what I recall. But how did it go from 7 to 4 for the road test? Can that be explained?
So yeah, let me just go back. So the provisional certificate is what the applicant is required to do. The 7 that we in the July hearing that we listed as requesting the Planning Commission to find an adequacy were those intersections that we felt that we can't do any more of these improvements. Like for example, 26 in Monocacy, there are right-of-way constraints there, and without doing major land taking or business impacts, those intersections cannot be widened or additional capacity be created at those intersections. So those intersections, per the code provisions, we recommended that the Planning Commission find those are adequate. Just basically saying that, yeah, we've done all the improvements that we can do. there is nothing more you can do to make this, to bring this intersection into compliance. So that's where the recommendation. So originally there was that 7 intersections that were listed for those kind of finding of adequacy. We kind of changed what the applicant went back and looked at in the interim was what else could we do, and that's what I was explaining with Monocacy and Mill Pond. They went ahead and added 100 more feet of storage to address that queue length issue there. The other intersection 26 in North Market, they went back and remeasured the storage and the queue length and said there was a difference of 100 feet that they were able to determine that that's adequate. And the third one was 26 in the Routson Way, Women's Mill Road intersection. What they're offering to do is restripe to provide an additional 15 more feet of storage. That's where the 95th percentile queue was showing they need 50 more feet. So they were able to reconfigure that and provide the additional 50 feet. So they were able to address 3 intersections. That still leaves 4 more intersections that require a finding of adequacy from the Planning Commission. Again, those are Monocacy at the Walmart entrance. Again, there the issue was the queuing. If you know the intersection between the Walmart entrance and 26, there's only so much space. You can't add any more left turn storage there. Right. And the Monocacy and 26 had capacity issues. The same with Monocacy and Riverbend. The 4th intersection that is still in the list is Warman's Mill Road, Mill Pond Road intersection, where you go to Clemson Corner. And that one leg is it's actually the driveway that you used to go into Clemson Corner is in their property. The other queuing issues on Mill Pond are, it's long enough. It's just that there is an intervening intersection. On the queuing issue on Warman's Mill Road, it's the same issue as I described at Monocacy at the Walmart. If you look at it, there is back-to-back left turn lanes between the Clemson Corner entrance and 26. So again, it's the distance between the intersections are set at this point, so there is really no way to add any more left turn adequacy. And I think so. That's the 4. They still would require the finding of adequacy. The other part of it, which I've kind of detailed in July with everything else that was going. So the traffic study presents a snapshot of what is today. It doesn't play out what's the scenario in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, especially in this master plan scenario, where we're looking at a 10, 15, 20-year build out. The traffic study doesn't do that. It just take the existing network, put improvements that we know are funded for the next 5 years. So it's sort of key to remember that all the roadway connections, other capacity improvements that we are providing. So it's a long stretch. I mean, we're looking at 10, 15 years, and the extension of Warman's Mill Road, the extension of Grange Mill lane that the applicant will provide, connecting Mill Pond to Warman's Mill Road, US 15 improvements. So those are kind of more in the closer timeline of maybe 5 to 10 years, which we are not anticipating today, and help disperse traffic. And we're also building non-auto modes, support for non-auto modes like the East Street Trail and sidewalk in 26 and a lot of other connections. So this gives an opportunity for those who are dependent on cars to go from point A to B to say, okay, I want to use some other mode, or we want to support the transit infrastructure so that you don't necessarily have to drive alone. You can use the transit to get around. So those are kind of, unfortunately, doesn't capture in a typical traffic study because it's a very auto-driven analysis. So that's really where I think we kind of support the applicant's request, because given that this is a master plan as a 10, 15, 20-year build-out timeframe, we have other alternates to get around, and may not, the projected impacts may not necessarily materialize. And again, I just want to go back to kind of emphasize that the biggest constraint that we see from the traffic study is the 95th percentile queue length. Again, that there is that 5% chance the existing storage might exceed. During peak hours, it should be okay during the off-peak hours. So that's really where we're saying that we support the applicant's request for the finding of adequacy.
Okay,
sorry,
thank you.
long-winded.
That's
Yeah,
no,
thanks, Sharon.
I needed all of it. Thank you so much. I do have one last question now.
Sure.
And it's really just a wording question. Is there like a technical difference between when it says multifamily dwelling units and just multifamily units? I mean, anyone can answer that. I just I didn't know if that meant like different
No,
types of models
for-
or
Yeah,
no, it's
for-
it's
Same.
Yeah,
same
okay.
thing.
even for traffic study purposes, it's the same. I mean, we do have specific land use categories in the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is they have a trip generation manual based on all the empirical data that are collected over the decades to kind of say, if, how much each type of unit or will generate during the peak hours. So
okay,
the
because I wasn't
multifamily,
sure if that meant like apartments are counted the same as like a single family. Are they? Or
No, they're not.
what are they called?
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they called something else? Which one is it referring to when it's multifamily dwelling?
Yeah,
Attached.
Huh?
That would be your attached, your stacked up units, your apartments,
apartments,
condos.
okay.
Yeah, it's a multifamily building. That's the structure.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. And that was my last
Yeah.
question for right now.
Alright.
Thanks.
Elaine, any questions?
So that was the question I had in regards to that as well, was understanding the remaining four. So that was good. I had a note here, and I think I just need to go back and read to understand the conditions of approval that were listed. So I'll do that offline myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next one is the MU text amendment.
Thank you. So we just have two major updates that are captured in the staff report. And as with the previous one for Frederick Health, we've tried to consolidate those updates in a kind of a text box to draw your attention to what information is new. For this one, there are really two substantive areas where we've added some additional information. One is in response to the questions regarding what is the Planning Commission's charge in reviewing a text amendment. The code tells us we can recommend approval, recommend denial, or recommend approval with modifications. So we wanted to take some time to kind of flesh that out for you a little bit more. When we say recommend approval with modifications, it's inherently suggesting that you're not producing a whole new text amendment, that you're recommending approval of the substantive nature of the text amendment that the applicants proposed, but with some modifications or alterations. The Planning Commission does not have the authority to otherwise generate a text amendment. So that would be consistent with the language we're using when we're establishing that reviewing authority. Only the City Council can apply for a text amendment, the department and an outside applicant. So it would make sense that in establishing your authority and reviewing a text amendment brought before you, it's not implied to suggest that the Planning Commission can take an idea that was brought to them and say, you know what, we're glad you brought this to our attention, but we have a different idea of a text amendment. It really should be a modification. So then the question becomes, well, where is that line? And to make it analogous to, a situation that we've seen in the city, sometimes people have a non-conforming fence, a fence that doesn't currently meet our standards for where you can have a fence. And we tell people, well, if you take it down, you can't replace it. So what do they start doing? They start replacing board by board by board
toward the fence. And at what point do you have a new fence? There's no real clear, bright line, right? Much like a text amendment. How many words do you change? Well, you could change one word and you could change the meaning completely. You could change all of the words and still have the essence of the same text amendment. So unfortunately, we can't give you a clear, bright line of you can, change 42% of the words, because it really is fact-based on the context that we're looking at and the text amendment before you. So with that in mind, it is the Planning Commission's recommendation. So you want to think about, are there substantive components of this text amendment that you support, and are there portions of it that you would change to better reflect what you believe is more consistent with the comprehensive plan and the code? If the Planning Commission can't get to that conclusion, then the recommendation really is denial. If substantively you say we can't modify this to any point where we all, or not all, it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote, but we can't reach a vote that would pass, then the recommendation really is denial. If the commission reached that point, I would not say I would say you're very much enabled in your letter to the council to say something to the effect of, this text amendment was brought forward to us. We see the issue. We couldn't make a recommendation of approval even with modifications, but we ask that the council continue to explore this concept. So that might be an option if the commission can't reach an actual recommendation for approval or approval with certain modifications. In terms of whether you bring a language to read at a meeting and say, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval and read it, that's not really the issue. It really is still back to, are you changing the substantive nature with reading whatever you're proposing, or is it a modification? One of the cases that we had previously discussed was the caterer in the MU district. That was a text amendment that was proposed. We went back and revisited the meeting and the language that Commissioner Valencia proposed, and that very much was a modification to, kind of a variation on the theme of what that text amendment was. The proposal was to define a caterer and then establish a certain percentage of retail sales allowed inherently as what was part of a caterer, saying, I think 70% over 50%, and adding some language to further establish what kind of functions a caterer has, were very much modifications on that text amendment. It wasn't a whole new thank you, we appreciate you brought this to our attention, and here's different language that's changing the nature of what that amendment was trying to achieve. So hopefully that provides some guidance for your deliberations on Monday with this regard. There, as I said, it's very fact-based. What can you do? What can you do? I wish I could say you can do 1, 2, and 3, and those are the simplest things, kind of very quantitative, but it really is much more subjective. Are the modifications you're proposing inherently changing the nature of the text amendment, or are they variations on the theme of what's been proposed? And as I said, the code allows an applicant to propose a text amendment. So there is some question of fairness, right? That this has been brought forward to the commission. The legislation says we want the commission's recommendation because they're expert matter, subject matter experts in this field. So if it isn't something that the commission broadly supports the concept of, then that should be your recommendation. So we have that, and then the other update we added is towards the end of the staff report. I'm sorry, we added 3 areas. I'm looking at page 5. We added some additional information for clarification about the other development projects that we had provided in that matrix. I wanted to make sure we clarified that many of those projects have not actually even started construction. So when we're thinking about the efficacy of this parameter for phasing and have other projects met this phasing requirement, not all of those projects have even started to be constructed or gotten all of their entitlements. So I didn't want anyone to misunderstand that table to suggest that all of these projects met that phasing requirement. So we've tried to provide a breakdown of where those projects were in the different stages. And then lastly, on page 7. Here is we just provided some additional information in response to the CoStar reports that are attached as exhibits. And as I said in the email the other day, the CoStar reports are both countywide and then the Frederick, the city of Frederick, and those are delineated by a notation at the top on the city of Frederick one. I just wanted to continue to reiterate that while this applicant has brought before you a certain set of circumstances that has prompted them to want to change the code, we should keep our review broad and make sure that we're taking into consideration as many scenarios as we can. Obviously, we can't think of everything, but there are other conditions that may necessitate applicant from requesting flexibility in their phasing schedule, both in its design to begin with, as well as changes to it over time. So just wanted to reiterate that there could be other factors besides the conditions of the retail market at a specific period of time that relate to this text amendment. And that is all we added.
All right, thank you. Elaine, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Great, Natasha?
Yes, thank you. So I hear what you're saying with the, I guess I'm confused on where you just said there's no, who's enforcing if it's like or determining if it's a modification or a complete change, because in my mind, any type of suggestion would be a modification because it's on topic of what's presented. So there's no lines here. So that really doesn't make sense to me. It kind of just, like you said, a little bit of everything for everything. And that's still very unclear.
Sure. So using that catering text amendment, if you want to think about that one, because I think that was a good example of what I would consider. And this is, as I said, there's no 2 + 2 = 4. This is not a quantitative calculation we can do here. The caterer text amendment, the concept of it, if we step way back, the concept of that was to introduce a definition for a land use that we all understand what it is, right? You say cater and most people get the gist of it, but we didn't have a definition in the code. So that proposal was to introduce what do we mean by caterer, and in that definition, build in a threshold that defined a characteristic of it as it relates to retail sales. So the characteristic is this use is basically someone who prepares food, preps it on site, takes it off site, may set up tables and chairs, but can also have, the applicant proposed, up to 50% retail, trying to establish, a proportionality that still kept it, didn't turn it into a restaurant. So your recommendation was, I'd like to recommend approval with changes. There was some language you wanted to add about the activities of what the caterer did related to kind of off-site transportation, or I don't have the exact words, but there was that. And then you said, well, I think they should be able to have up to 70% retail. So it was still implying that concept of defining what the use was, saying, hey, we think retail should be a component of this, and then modifying how much. So I think that's a great example of taking a concept and proposing some changes to it, but keeping the concept somewhat intact. Right.
So in this case, they're talking about phasing, and the modification with the wording I presented was also about phasing. So what's the difference?
I think the language that I saw after the meeting, I wasn't there, it looked to want to maintain the percentage, and it looked to want to develop a different scheme for how that could be phased than what was proposed. So those are really the two fundamental components of what this applicant's asking for. They're asking for flexibility from those standards, and then they're asking for an administrative approval process where they've defined some characteristics. So, and this, it is somewhat subjective, but
that's why I'm like, who decides if?
Well, you as a body have to deliberate and see if you can reach a successful motion, right? That's the goal. Right. You have to.
But are you saying that my modification, what I deem is subjective as a modification to their wording, it's not a modification to staff maybe, or like who's whose objective or perspective does that come from if there's no parameters for that?
I think it's to your commission members to a certain extent. I mean, it is a recommendation that you're forwarding to the council. I think we need to think about, right, kind of stepping back. Not all jurisdictions require the planning commission to be a voice to the council in amending their legislation. The city of Frederick has said we respect that our planning commission is the subject matter expert in sections of the LMC. So we want your feedback on what the applicant is proposing. That's not saying we want your feedback on a text amendment to change this section, right? Like it is specific to their request. So in that role, you're being asked
So we're not
to
supposed
take
to
what
say
the applicants.
anything about
No,
what they present, because then that would be us trying to change it. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. Where's the limit? Because
Gabrielle, would you mind if I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if maybe saying it a different way would be more helpful. But so a lot of plannings, we inherit code. I wasn't there when you wrote your code, and I have to determine the intent of that code based on what's written. And so when an applicant puts forth a text amendment, they have a specific intent behind it, and it's their proposal. When we change the wording too much to change their intent, then we've gone a little bit too far. If we want to do our own, that's a whole nother process. But this is really the applicant, and minor modifications, totally fine. But to say, no, we don't like what you suggest, we want to keep this, that to me, as someone who reads code and interprets it very often, is just a little bit more than what we should be doing for an applicant's proposal, if that makes sense.
And if I can expand on that a little bit, regardless of whether we approve this request or deny this request, the text that the applicant submitted is what is going to be seen by the city council and what they are going to be voting on.
Yes.
We cannot change the language that is sent up to the city council because it's not our language, it's the applicant's language.
Yes,
So-
and we are not the applicant.
And I
So
think
I have
that's
a
very
question on that.
So
Go ahead.
as a group, if we so disagree with the applicant's language, and if our discussions haven't encouraged the applicant to make some changes to the language, then our job is to deny it.
recommend denial.
Yeah, recommend, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
I
That's what I meant.
got you. I
Um,
got you.
So if all of us are finding ourselves that we want to really rewrite this, then we shouldn't
Right.
approve it. Or recommend that it be approved. We should recommend that it be denied. Fundamentally, if there's aspects of it that we like, we can say, well, we like this part, but if you want to approve this, then we suggest you add language about this and this. And that's really all our job is. And I was kind of hoping that all of our discussions would encourage the applicants to kind of look at the language themselves and resubmit it. But if it hasn't, then in my perspective, that makes it easier. It's like, okay, so sorry, Natasha. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, all right. Then we are on to the Bloomfield Water Tower. That Pam's?
Yep, it's me.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was trying to figure out what letter you were on.
Oh,
And I thought, you're not on F already, are you?
I don't know, because when we're doing this, I can't look at the actual agenda, so I just make notes.
Okay, well, this is a pretty straightforward one, I think. They really don't have any, they have one little correction, the condition. They do have the modification for the barbed wire that needs to be considered for security of the fencing.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
And it is part of the Bloomfield property, but the city will be taking over the outlot and the maintenance of this water tower. So that's it.
Oh, cool. All right. Any questions from the commission? No,
No, thanks.
all right. Onward and upward. The Frederick Research Park. Is that Christina?
So, yeah, this one's just the same as it was at workshop. Really simple medical office in an area that already has a bunch of medical offices. They are still requesting 3 modifications, which we fully support. Same as last time, and they've actually been able to get it down to just 3 technical comments for conditions. So it's pretty clean site plan.
Right, any questions? Nope, don't see any questions. All right, onward and upward. Mormons Mill Court Apartments, Pam?
Okay, back to me.
Now we've got both the site plan and the forest conservation plan. I'm kind of lumping them all together. You can
Yes.
separate them out if you need to.
Yeah, well, I wanted to highlight a couple things that in their with the master plan, they were approved for a certain amount of percentage of land area for residential, non-residential, and for the parks and open space. We were looking at their parks and open space and came very close to thinking that it is a 1 acre, that they are meeting that minimum for the parks and open space, and we want them to verify and increase if they have to, I would assume, but for that 1 acre. And the rest of it is, of course, in compliance with the non-residential. They got approved for reducing the 4.4% for the non-residential. They will be subdividing that non-residential lot out from the project at a later date. They will be submitting their design standards and everything for their buildings at a later date. As you know, most of the time we have that coming through separately for meeting their compliance with the elements for 604. They do have an amount of fee in lieu of that they will need to pay for the parks, for the parkland, that the Parks and Rec did recommend and accept the fee, accepting fee in lieu of in this case. And that will have to go to the city council eventually after this for the appraised land. If they go ahead and subdivide that non-residential property off and not knowing where they're going to draw that line, if they do not draw the line to include their parking, they will need an off-site parking easement for shared on the residential side of the property. They do have enough parking in consideration if they can consider the appropriate use for the building to comply with the parking they have available. And the most important thing I think to recognize is the city engineer did provide us with a letter, a conditional approval letter for the design of the project, and recognizing the floodplain issue and setbacks, and that is conditioned on MDE and their approval for the floodplain configuration and changes and fill in the area. And MTA is still noted for approval for those 2 crossings that they need to go across that the area that we have our path going through, and have and they have to cross that and then improve it for the roads. So that is it. And they've got a number of conditions to meet. Some of them are cleanup, some are more important than others. One of them for the site plan, of course, is they have to get their unconditional approval of their forest plan. With the forest plan, they do not have a whole lot of conditions. They do have their modification for removal of specimen trees. They are paying a hefty sum for fee in lieu of, and this was accepted because of knowing that the project, as they were justifying, that it would not be feasible or a viable project if they had to plant more on site. So that's where we fell with that. And they are going to try to find off-site planting in the interim as they move forward, and we will see how that falls out.
Great, thank you. Any questions? So I've got a question. At what point will they be separating the lot for the non-residential, and how procedurally is that handled? if and when they need to do the off-site parking modification?
They would have to have that done before they pull a building permit.
Okay,
They'd have to bring that final plat in for recording. That will actually go before you because they do not have a preliminary plat to allow it to be a staff level. So that when
Okay.
they bring that final plat in, it will go before you. It should be fairly simple, straightforward, and everything. And also as part of that final plat, the condition would be that that easement agreement would be in place. So
okay.
that's
So
where that
so it
stands.
won't be a modification to the site plan, but it will just be a recordation of the plat,
Right.
approval of the plat. Okay,
I mean, I have, hold on, let me make sure. I think it's either a note form or something that we have on there that, yes, they have to have that easement in place and everything before they record the plat. But to do that easement, it will be with
they
the
have to
plat.
do the plat first. So
Right.
Catch 22. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? No, I don't see anything. Does anybody else have anything else that we just need to bring up before we adjourn the meeting?
I just wanted to really quickly introduce Michael Hackman. If we hadn't before, I think his first meeting where he attended was the Planning Commission workshop last
Right.
month, August. Yeah. So
Yep.
Michael is here. He is our new current planning planner. So he filled one of the 2 remaining vacancies we have, who will be working under Christina. So we're getting back up to full speed, hopefully sooner than later. Michael comes from the great city of Gaithersburg, my hometown, and we're excited to have him here with us. So you'll
right.
see him lingering around until he has his own project to present before you.
All right, well, welcome. I think we met at the workshop,
Thank
but
you.
it's nice to have you on board.
Yep, you'll be
Thank
seeing
you.
him a whole bunch more.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like that's all we have to do today, so we can adjourn this meeting and I will see everybody on Monday night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Have a
bye.
good weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.